episode of The Lager Line, brought to you by Clutch City Lager of Karbach Brewing. This is a new podcast series bringing you interviews from people in and around your Houston Rockets. I'm your host, Ben Dubose, longtime Rockets media member and currently the editor of USA Today's Rockets Wire and a contributor to Sports Talk 790. The idea with The Lager Line is to peel back the curtain a little bit during this 2022 off-season. There are already a lot of podcasts, including my former show at Locked On Rockets, that do a great job with opinion and analysis. For the most part, that's not really going to be our niche here. Instead, what we're going to be trying to do is interview people in and around the organization to look back at the season that was, as well as what's to come in the months and years ahead. The idea is for me to shut up and listen, some might say, and hopefully you guys will find some value from what you're hearing as well. The concept is to try and have an episode every week, although keep in mind that since this is primarily an interview show, there may be some variance due to scheduling factors. Anyway, without further delay, let's get this series started. To kick it off, we're welcoming in Gretchen Sheirr, President of Business Operations with the Rockets. Let's play back that conversation. Gretchen, welcome to our inaugural episode. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for joining us. And I think a good place to start. So we're recording this in May 2022. It's basically been 1 year since the end of the 2021 season, Tad Brown's departure, you officially getting the role and the title. What has that year been like for you? What are some of the highlights in, your first year as president of business operations with the Rockets?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, how much time do you have? Because we did a lot. We did a lot this year as I was going back and just, recapping the year. But to start, I know Karbach is a partner on this, so I want to know why we're doing it remotely and why I'm drinking coffee and why we are not having a beer, having our new Clutch City Lager beer while we are doing this. So I think that for me, I'm a beer drinker. I'm from Louisiana. I went to LSU. So creating a beer in the first year with Karbach is a highlight, I think, of my career. But no, it's been a super exciting year. And I was looking back thinking about kind of the moments we really felt like this year was going to be special and something different. So I don't know if you remember this, but it was a second preseason game. We were playing Miami. The league decides to play it on ESPN2. So they tell us we're going to have a 9 o'clock start time. Awesome. So coming out of COVID, still during baseball season, during, in the middle of the week on a preseason game, we're going to get a 9 o'clock start. So I would be lying if I said that we were not nervous as an organization on what attendance and show up rate was going to be. And it was a pretty good crowd to start with at 9 o'clock. And that game got super exciting. Obviously Miami's a very, very good team and it was really, really close at the end. And if you remember the last 2 minutes, everybody that was there was standing up, and probably aggressive to say that it felt like a playoff game, but it kind of felt like a playoff game in the building. And I think everybody in the organization, I don't want to say took a sigh of relief, but really was inspired and felt kind of the hope and the enthusiasm that our fans felt about this young team. So that's kind of where it started. We brought in a new jersey entitlement partner right before the draft last year. Obviously the draft was really exciting. We did an HBCU night during our Black History Month celebration where we had TSU and Prairie View alumni out and their bands played, and it was like a college game where the bands were in the upper bowl, which was really fun. We had a new broadcast team, right? Craig assumed the full-time responsibilities. We brought in a new person in Ryan Hollins, which was one of the first decisions that we got to make on the business side, and watching them gel and their excitement and their enthusiasm and their connection to our fan base has been awesome. We're going to unveil our first renovation of a basketball court next week in partnership with Memorial Hermann and in the city of Houston, which we haven't done in a while. So it's been that's just a few things that we're really excited about this year.
By the way, one of my highlights, you mentioned those October games, which even in the preseason had some extra juice to them just because it was really the first time in a year and a half that we had full capacity crowds at Toyota Center. And I think back to the home regular season opener. A few of us were lucky enough to get the party suite for Rockets Twitter, which was an amazing touch. You guys were so good with us this year. And I know part of that is, I guess, number one, it's a rebuilding team, but also there's just sort of some pent up demand from not doing this for the past couple of years. And so you guys were able to engage with us, and it was great. But we talked about the October and the overlap with baseball. I will never forget the home opener for the regular season overlapped with Game 6 of the American League Championship Series, which I'm sure was not ideal for y'all from a moving tickets perspective, with the Astros playing just a few blocks away, but you got to make the most of it. And my favorite part, of course, those of us lucky enough to be in the suite, we had the Astros games on the TV in the suite. And typically the way it works is an hour after the game, everyone has to be cleared out, because obviously you have to get Toyota Center ready for the next night. And I actually think there was a concert the next night, if I'm remembering correctly. But as it turned out, an hour after the game, or like 45 minutes, the Astros are in the middle of like the 8th inning, and they are 3 outs away from clinching the American League pennant. And we get this notice from, the rep that's in there, hey, you guys only have like 10 minutes left. And we just start panicking because we're like, oh my God, where are we going to go? Because we're going to get kicked out, when they're literally winning, because we had stayed long after the game to watch. And as it turned out, I later heard it was Tillman himself, because of course Tillman Fertitta, owner of the Rockets, supports all the Houston sports teams. He wanted to watch the end of the Astros games in whatever lounge he was at. So basically on direction from the very top, we ended up, and everybody ended up getting to stay until the end of the Astros game. And so we got to see the Rockets win the opener, and then we got to, thanks to Tillman and you guys in the front office, we got to watch the end of the Astros game at Toyota Center as well. So that's just my, little side note. I thought that was just a perfect touch. And really, I guess it's one of those, from your perspective, you're trying to make the most of it. Like, the Astros playing that deep, and the overlap with the new NBA calendar that starts in mid-October is not ideal. But at the same time, it's kind of some fun cross-promotion activities too, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's sports is sports, and we have a great environment in this city. And so, yeah, like our typical policy is an hour after, we have to flip, we have events the next day. And sometimes, you're just busy working. You're not always thinking about like what is surrounding us, including, where things are in the Astros game. And so Tillman is in the hospitality business. So making sure that we're serving our clients and our fans and what is important to them is there. And so once we realized the game wasn't going to finish within the time slot of our normal kind of policies and procedures, we changed our policies and procedures so that people could fix it up and enjoy it. But yeah, I mean, like watching the Astros have the success that they're having, and as we're beginning this journey with this young team, the synergy of having a franchise down the street who had a rebuild process that went through, a youth movement, and then watching that come to fruition is obviously super helpful in our storytelling, and our fans, understand what that journey looks like. They've watched it just a few blocks away occur over the last several years.
Yes, absolutely. And of course it helps that there's, synergies between the organization. We've seen, for example, Alex Bregman, Lance McCullers, courtside at a number of Rockets games. And I forgot who it was. Someone on Twitter a few days ago asked me about, do I think that the success of the Astros after their rebuild makes it easier for fans to get on board with what the Rockets are doing now? And I said 100% yes. I think that is something that makes people in Houston a lot more willing to sort of understand the process and what goes into it to try and hopefully set yourselves up for, years and hopefully decades of continued success. As far as the Rockets, let's talk about, the leadership ranks. Last time we did a podcast, this was like October of 2021. And there was so much new. You had just taken your job a few months ago, and they were just wrapping up the first season with Steven Silas as head coach, Rafael Stone as general manager, and of course everybody, at least in the fan base. Now I know for you in the organization, you guys are, people that have been involved with the Rockets for a while, but on the outside, there were a lot of fans that saw, Gerald Morey leave, Mike D'Antoni leave, Tad Brown leave, so much turnover. Whereas now today in May 2022, there's actually some stability that, you, Rafael, Steven have all been in these roles for some time. I know in terms of like a day-to-day functionality, you guys are used to, your roles and what you need to do, but just from like sort of a branding standpoint to the outside, how helpful is it that there's some stability that you guys have now been doing this for 1 to 2 years, and it seems like there's a lot of continuity with leadership in Houston right now.
Yeah, it's always, I think you and I talked about it last time. Like I get from it's, I'm in a new role. Rafael's in a new role. Coach is there as a head coach, but coach has, been in the league for 2 decades, and Rafael and I have been with the organization for 2 decades. So for us, kind of the stability and hearing like new to our role or new to the organization is something different for Rafael and I to hear, because we've been there for so long, but we recognize, obviously it's in a different capacity and a different capacity for fans. So yeah, we've got a good group. We're really confident in our skills and our ability and the direction from the Fertittas. But at the same time, we also have, new and fresh set of eyes and other areas of leadership and other areas of the staff to make sure that we're balancing, the tenure and the experience that we have in this market with this team, but that we also are bringing in new folks into the fold to make sure that we're taking, a fresh look at how we've done things and using this opportunity in this new journey, during this rebuild or whatever it is that you want to call it, to make sure that we're exploring every opportunity possible and doing new and creative things and taking risks where we need to take risk and continuing to operate efficiently and as a well-oiled business as we have done for decades as well.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the diversity stands out with a lot of you all as well. You're one of the only women that's president of business operations for an NBA team. Stephen and Rafael are one of the only Black pairings of GM and head coach in the NBA. Not sure exactly how many, but I know it's a fairly small number. We've talked about the overall importance of diversity in the past in those leadership roles. So I want to, look at this from a slightly different way. When you were growing up in the 90s, how impactful would it have been for you to see leadership represented with that level of diversity? Because I'm imagining that's where it's really useful, is that for the next generation, they're not just being told abstractly, well, you can do this door is open. They can actually see it. And we should mention too that Clay Allen, general counsel, is one of the highest ranking openly gay executives on a professional sports team, to my knowledge. So looking back to when you were a kid in the 90s growing up, how useful would it have been to not only hear that those doors are potentially open, but to actually see that diversity, represented on a sports team that you follow?
Yeah, look, it's extremely important. You've said it, like representation matters. It's really hard to believe that you can be something if you don't see anyone that, is like you in those types of roles. And so you certainly feel a lot of I feel a lot of accountability, a lot of pressure, right, to make sure that I am representing that well and that and doing well in this role. And, for us, we live in the most diverse city. So it's super important and even more important, right, that our leadership and that our staff reflects that. I was really important, growing up as a kid, like I wasn't necessarily thinking about my career at that point. But when I started my career and I really started to think about what was next for me, Pam Gardner was the president of the Astros at the time. And so, how much, just, it never really occurred to me that wouldn't be something possible in our city and our market, because down the street, Pam was, the president of a baseball team, and at the time was the only person.
So let's flip back to your job. As far as the business of the Rockets, what is it like trying to get people on board with a rebuild? Because one of the things that I think Rafael talked about at the very beginnings of this process was that it's going to take some getting used to for fans in Houston, because people have been going for it here for so long. And I don't know, perhaps Daryl would have had to do it 10 years ago, but then the Harden trade in 2012 sort of moved the franchise forward in a way that not everyone was expecting before that. So really, you probably have to go back to, I want to say, the Steve Francis years prior to Yao Ming, and I suppose leading to Yao Ming, before the Rockets really had a true rebuild in Houston. So when you're talking to ticket buyers, sponsors, partners, whatever it may be, what's your pitch these days? What do you say to get people involved in a sort of Rockets community that isn't used to this type of process?
Yeah, we feel like we're on this journey to greatness, right? As a franchise, we've always felt like we've been on a journey to greatness, and it comes in different forms, right? Sometimes it comes where you're needing to build a team from the ground up. Sometimes that journey means finding an additional piece when you're already at the peak to take it to that next level. And in our pitch to fans and our conversations with fans and partners and sponsors has to be authentic. Like it can't be forced or faked. We have a reputation and a history of doing things extremely well. And I think that we have the trust of our fan base and our partners that we are confident, that we know what we're doing, that we have a direction, that we have a path, that we have a vision. And, it's going to take some patience. And it's going to take, evaluating things in a different way, right? It's not necessarily evaluating by wins and losses that happen on the court. Like obviously winning makes everything a little bit easier, but it's in the progress and in that journey of watching the players develop and watching things come together in a little bit of a different way. And we're super fortunate because to date, like it's gone extremely well. Our players are developing really well. Our engagement with our fans and some of the different things that we're doing on the marketing, on the content side that allow our sponsors and our partners to engage in a different way has been really exciting. And so we're trying new things with them alongside that, right? This is the time where you get to get in on the ground floor, right? When you're winning and you're going to the Western Conference Finals, like everyone wants to be a part of your organization and you come in and you buy high, right? Like that's what happens when you want the tickets. That's what happens when you want the partnerships. And this is the opportunity for people to come in and have assets and seat locations and different partner elements that they wouldn't get to have or get to activate on if you wait, right, until you're at the other area. So it creates a lot of opportunity for fans and partners.
And I think one of the other things you guys have done, you brought in Julian Duncan last summer to basically lead your marketing efforts. You talked about marketing and content. There's been so many sort of creative outside the box things that maybe you don't do if this is 2018 and you're pushing for a title, but now it sort of has, or at least it feels like to me, there's a little bit more freedom since, the team just finished up a 20-62 year. They're going to get a top 5 draft pick. And so you can do some things that you might not do when things are perfect. And, a couple of examples I think about, the infamous, Fruit Loop hot dogs for a game and the viral tweet. Oh, the viral the viral Elon Musk tweet guaranteeing the number 1 pick in the 2022 draft. And then some of the ticketing promos have been creative. The keeping it 100 last year, easy as 1, 2, 3 this year, basically tying the results of the draft lottery to a perk for the buyer, and that, you get a couple of Nike jerseys, or you get, in this case, it's an autograph signing, right? With the 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So, basically tying in the ticket purchase, which is at a good rate anyway, like 10 tickets for, $100 or slightly more than $100. And then you get this big perk on top of it if the lottery goes your way. It just adds some fun to it. I guess, the word I go back to when we talk about all those initiatives is fun. And maybe that's something you don't do if you know you're a contender, but it seems like you guys are now trying to emphasize, fun and creative. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a fair way to put it. I mean, we always hope that it's fun, right? Even when we're good and we're winning. But as you know, and when you're a super fan, sometimes the better you are, the more stressful, right? It gets. And sometimes it's kind of hard to have fun when you're super stressed on every win or loss. It does give our fans a little bit more freedom to just enjoy, what is happening in this journey. And, for Tillman, people know this, right? He was a fan first. He's one of our original season ticket holders. Like he wants to have fun. He wants people to be excited during this process. And, one of the first meetings that we had when I was in this new role and we were talking about business planning, I mean, obviously this is a business, right? And so there are certain goals and objectives that it's my responsibility to get to. And he was very clear and said, I trust that you're going to get there, but at the end of the day, you need to sacrifice a little bit of that to make this experience fun and exciting for fans. I want them excited during this journey. They're excited. We're confident in the path that we're on. We're confident in our coaching staff and our GM and everything that we are trying to create. And we want fans to be as enthusiastic as we are in this process. So have some fun and make sure you create some energy. And that was the goal that we had this year.
And the other part of that I think sort of dovetails with your point on fun and creativity. You guys really engaged so much with your diehard fans this year, including those of us on Twitter we're so thankful for. I will never forget seeing the faces when We brought in Paulo Alves from Portugal for the season finale, which was just crazy. We did a GoFundMe and literally flew in someone from Portugal, a diehard fan, to come to the game. But then when there was a meetup just among fans, and then Rafael and Patrick Fertitta came up to meet them. And, that's the kind of thing that maybe doesn't happen if that last game you're playing for, home court throughout the playoffs or something like that. But, that's an example of something that you do to sort of make the most of the situation. And the other part too, I mentioned the party suite that you guys put together for Rockets Twitter early in the year. You did the social media night that involved Alperen Şengün and Josh Christopher, and very good tickets for fans that took that up. Is that sort of a silver lining? Like, I know, ticket inventory, obviously between the team not winning at the level that fans are used to, and then some of the COVID factors too, you have more ticket inventory than you would have, 3 or 4 years ago. But sort of the flip side to that is that you can then use that inventory to really reward your diehard fans and engage with them. Is that sort of a silver lining as you look at this past year?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's I talked earlier about our HBCU night, which was one of my favorite nights of the year. And we've done things before where, the bands have come and participated. And this year they sat in the stands, right, and played like you would during a college game. The dance cam was not the DJ. It was an actual band that's happening. And like, that's something that's very difficult to plan and do when your entire season is sold out, right? So, these are the times where we get to have those creative engagements with our fans, and hopefully now that we have that foundation, these are things that will stay for years to come.
Sure. As far as things that are under your watch, we talked about some of the sponsors earlier, certainly Carbach, this podcast. But also, you've got the jersey sponsor, Credit Karma Money. You've got the new thing with 50 Cent, which I thought was really cool. You've got Socios.com, a lot of new things that were put into place strictly under your watch under the past year. And I'm sure there's some I'm forgetting, but without talking too much about any one of those, because fortunately you guys are lucky enough to have, a number of dedicated sponsors. What's sort of the criteria besides the obvious revenue component? This is a business. You do want to make money. Besides the obvious revenue component, what are some of the things you're looking at that, tell you, is this company or is this group a good potential fit with the Rockets?
Yeah, I mean, look, we always look for an authentic connection between brands. Sometimes you have partners where it's not, it may not be as obvious, but obviously the more of that connection you have between that, the better the partnership is. We look for shared goals and values with our partners so that we can work on different initiatives together. So like you talked about with 50 Cent's company and the work that he's doing with his G Unity Foundation and the work that we do with Clutch City Foundation. Obviously the partnership is through his Spirits company. But it allows us to expand and do more in the community together and enhance what he's doing and his connection to Houston now that he lives here. With Credit Karma Money, they provide, this great service for people who are trying to build their credit and build their scores so that they can, create more opportunity for themselves and for their family in the future. They have a huge database, which allows us reach to, hopefully gain more Rockets fans. It allows them reach into our fans to share their products and services. So it's been a really exciting year with partners. And I think during COVID, when the world shuts down and, people really realize how much that digital connection with your customers, your clients, and your fans, people are going to rely on, to be fortunate enough like we are to work for an organization, to have a brand where sometimes the first thing you do in the morning is open up your phone to see what the Rockets are doing. That is something that we don't take lightly. And when we can use and help leverage the connection that we have with our fans for another company, to help grow their business, that's super important for them. And it's important for us that we're delivering some synergies and some authentic value to our fans as well.
Yeah. And I mentioned earlier in the podcast that, I think one reason for optimism in October with regards to the crowds and the energy, even for like a 9 p.m. tip-off, was the fact that it had really been like a year and a half from March 2020 to October 2021. That was a huge gap in having full capacity crowds at Rockets games. And so there was a lot of sort of pent up demand and enthusiasm. one way that you guys sort of made the best of a non-ideal situation. I know you did a lot of upgrades, and I've written about them at RocketsWire, to the facilities at Toyota Center. You got the new lighting system in place for this year. There's all sorts of new mobile food ordering, concessions, seat delivery options that you guys have put together. I know this year you also started the cryptocurrency as an option. What type of feedback have you heard about sort of the things you put in place during the COVID hiatus? I know that was sort of the ideal time to do some of those upgrades because people weren't using Toyota Center at nearly the same rate that they are in normal times. So I guess number one, what type of feedback have you heard about those things? And secondly, are there any other upgrades that fans are going to be able to notice in the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, over the next few years, for sure. We've got a little ways to go for that. But for this upcoming year, I think we talked about this last year also, the amount that people rely on their phone and ease of use, either coming into the building, ordering from their phone. The attention span of us has certainly gotten shorter during this time period. So we're really diving back into some of these upgrades that we've already made and taking them to the next level. So, last year we did the lighting. We've gotten amazing feedback from that. Year one was kind of testing different settings and how we can use it in game presentation, and we'll continue to do that as well. Our crypto integration is continuing to progress where it'll be available at more, through more options. And then the mobile delivery, last summer we upgraded the point of sale system for all of food and beverage, which is something that fans probably can't see, but really helpful for our back of house staff for speed of service. And so connecting those things together. So adding a frictionless option where it's a grab and go that automatically, checks you in and out of what you're ordering. Those are being installed, over the summer. The expansion from our point of sale system that I mentioned into our Rockets app, which will allow people sort of like a Starbucks mode where you can have digital dollars in your Rockets app through your ticket so that you can just scan your app to buy your food, where you can get rewards and different credits for doing that, is all kind of the implementation. So a lot of the work that we did last summer to get these systems in place. This year, it's how do we reward fans for using them?
I want to transition to talking a little bit more about the fan experience, because I know that's something you manage very closely, the day-to-day activities at Toyota Center and making sure that the experience is as positive as it can be for everybody that goes through the doors. One thing that I noticed, and a few other media people, I was talking to Jonathan Fagan of the Chronicle, and he said the same thing, was just how engaged people were this year. Like, you could have the team down 15 or 20 points in the fourth quarter, and KJ Martin would go in for one of his classic throwdown dunks, and people would lose their minds, even though the game is largely out of reach. And I think certainly it speaks to the fact that they're on board with the rebuild. That's something that Rafael has tried to be very transparent about with the fan base. And so I think, being open and honest in communication makes it easier. But also, maybe there's a correlation with not having full capacity crowds for 18 months. I'm not sure what it was, but it felt like even for a team that wasn't getting the wins, the fans were very engaged, and in some ways, even more engaged than when times were, great a few years ago, depending on the game. Is that something that you sensed, and, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, we all did, right? Everybody felt it. Like it was hard not to feel it, whether you work in the front office, whether you were in basketball operations, whether you were a fan, whether you were part of the media, you could definitely feel the excitement there. So look, I think it's a lot of different things combined, right? That kind of all came together. A lot of it was, as I mentioned earlier, like that was a specific focus that we had this year, was to make sure that we were creating ways for the fans to get more involved in the game, that we were creating opportunities for diehard fans who maybe couldn't afford to come to a game. This is the opportunity that they could come, like really making sure that everything that we did was to create energy and enthusiasm around the growth and the journey that this team is on, right? And so, I describe this sometimes, like I have kids, right? And when your kids are growing up, sometimes there's things in life that you just take for granted. And then when you see them through the eyes of your kids, it's just this fresh air that you get. And so when you see things through a journey of this young man and these, and sometimes kids, right, achieving their dreams of playing in the NBA for the first time, yeah, you might be down, but KJ Martin had a career night, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're seeing things through the set of, the eyes of kids who are growing and developing and doing things for the first time, it's really hard if we're doing our job, which is telling their story and making sure that our fans are connected and they know the journey that we're on and they believe in the vision that we're there. It's very hard not to get caught up in the excitement of their growth and development.
Was there maybe a silver lining to the fact that, the year that I feel like was truly bottoming out for the fan base and it had all that transition we talked about earlier, Daryl, Mike D'Antoni, Tad Brown, all going out, James Harden leaving as well. And then so much transition in the 2020 to 2021 season happened in a year that really there were very few fans to begin with because of COVID. And, this past year, it certainly wasn't ideal from like a wins and losses perspective, but you had a lot more for fans to be excited about because obviously Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, Josh Christopher, who by the way is fantastic with fans. You can see the connection there.
Yeah.
Was there maybe a small silver lining that the year that was truly bottoming out, that 2020 to 2021 season where so much had changed, you weren't even sure if you were going to keep your draft pick at the end of it or it might have gotten swapped with Oklahoma City, was a year that from a business perspective was going to be, let's just say, suboptimal regardless due to COVID. Whereas this past year, maybe the wins aren't a ton better, but there was a lot more for fans to be excited about. Is that sort of something you can take out of it?
Yes. Yes. The timing of that is definitely, was definitely conducive to the process. And so then when things came back to full capacity, when everything was moving, it was kind of a line in the sand of this was the past, this was the future, let's go. Right.
Yep.
And everybody was on board with let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think sort of helped as the season moved along, there was so much enthusiasm by the late games. I remember obviously the Hawks season finale. I remember the Kings game with the infamous streaker, by the way, which had quite a response.
There's always something new. Right?
Yeah, always. I know that was fun for you. There's so many things that go into, attendance and enthusiasm. Certainly the fans are getting more used to the players too, and Jalen's historic stretch to the end of the year really got people going. But also, towards the end of the year, you had full capacity crowds throughout, but we saw so many sort of behavioral changes just in society. I'd say even in like March and April 2022 compared to December and January at the peak of Omicron, it felt like it really took until the second half of the year for a lot of people to truly get back or get closer to their pre-COVID sort of socializing patterns, if you will. Is that something that you look at from a revenue perspective in terms of selling tickets as a source of optimism for next year? Because I'm sure you had some people, as far as, your season ticket sales, your packages, whatever else, that, it wasn't so much that they didn't want to be involved with the Rockets because the team is rebuilding. It's just people were hesitant to truly embrace like full capacity indoor events this time a year ago when you guys were making calls. Whereas now it seems like not everyone, but a much bigger chunk of people are willing to go back to the way they were living in 2019. Is that a source of optimism potentially for you guys heading into next season?
Yeah. I mean, when your business is to open the doors, whether it's for a concert or a basketball game, to welcome people into an indoor facility for a live event, and there's a pandemic, like that is certainly a challenging environment. And while it's not over, like you've seen consumer behavior, start to change. So we are, that in combination of, some trust and understanding of the journey that we're on and fans being even more excited and having another draft coming up. We had the most concerts that we've ever had in Toyota Center over the past year. And so we're excited about the future for sure.
As we wind down with Gretchen Sheirr, President of Business Operations for the Rockets, I want to spend our last couple of minutes talking about the players on the court. I know your job is not basketball ops. That's slightly different than Tad Brown, who over the years had progressed into, I don't want to say it was his job, but dabbled a little bit into the basketball operations side of the business. I know in your case, it's not your job, but just from a fan perspective, what did you think of the team this year? What are some of your favorite moments? And, with Jalen in particular, does that stretch at the end of the year that was so electric, so just historic. I think he was really 5 straight 30-plus point games down the stretch of the season, one of the only rookies in NBA history to do that. How much does that give you guys to be excited about for next season?
Oh, a ton. I mean, look, it's, basketball, the development of a basketball team and business, like while they're very different, there's similarities, right? It's got to be about the journey. It's got to be about putting in the work. It can't just be about the end goal. If you aren't focusing on milestones and development and strategy and, whether it's business or player development, if all you're focused on is the end goal and not the work that you have to do in order to get there, then you're never going to get to where you want to be. So this journey to greatness, right? Both on the business side and the basketball side is something that we're doing. A lot of development has to occur on both sides in order for us to get there. We're very confident, obviously, in Jalen's abilities. And so the hope, right? The hope for Jalen, the payoff for all of the work that was happening all season, both for the fans and for him personally, whenever you start to see and reap the benefits of the work that you've done, that's always really exciting. So, one of my favorite games of the year was that Washington game towards the end of March, right? Like
the Christian Wood explosion.
Yeah. So we had just in general for the team, it's like you have this really young team who, halftime did not look good. Right. We had a bunch of clients actually that were in from out of town on that game. And so it was, not necessarily the most fun first half. And then just to watch this young team, just not ever give up, right? And watch them come together and come behind. And on any given night, it could be a different person. And then, watching Jalen's kind of explosion in the second half was obviously a huge highlight for everybody and for him.
Absolutely. The other interesting thing from Jalen, and not just Jalen, I suppose the same is true with Şengün, with Christopher, any of your young guys. This is a franchise that is so used over the years to having these big name veteran stars, James Harden, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Dwight Howard. There's a long list just within the past 10 years. And of course that overlaps with your current role because, you guys want them to succeed from a business standpoint. They're important in terms of how you engage with many of your clients, your sponsors, whatever it may be. How different is it going from some of these veteran stars that I'm sure are fairly business savvy to now, when you guys on the business side interact with 19 and 20-year-olds like Jalen Green, like Alperen Şengün, like Josh Christopher? How different is it dealing with them relative to some of the more established veteran stars that, has sort of defined the previous 10 years of Rockets basketball?
Yeah, I mean, all of our players have always been great, right? The veterans are professionals and, they've all been so great to work with. The difference is, these guys were doing things for the first time. So I went to my 21st media day, right, this year, capturing content for partners. You're doing media interviews, you have kind of a routine of what you're doing. And this year, half the team walked in and it was the first time they've ever done it, right? And so we had to make sure that we weren't just recycling old ideas, right? We had to be young. We had to be fresh. You had Josh Christopher and Jalen and Alpi who had their own ideas of things that they wanted to do for social media because they grew up in this digital world. And that's not necessarily the case for a 30-something-year-old veteran. And so it's pushed us to be better. And as I said earlier, it's really hard not to be excited and enthusiastic when you've got these young guys just thrilled to be, it's like the first day of school, right? They'd never done a media day before. And so there was this extra level of responsibility for us to deliver an experience to them that, they'll remember forever. For it's their 21st media day.
Yeah.
Like it was their...
I'll never forget, by the way, the media day at the Post Oak. And of course, for those of us in media, it was especially fun because it was really our first in-person media day in a couple of years.
In a while. Yep.
Yeah. And it was supposed to start, I want to say 10, 11, whatever it was in the morning. And one of the media relations reps came in and say, sorry, we got a slight delay. And somebody asked, oh, what's going on? And she told us, yeah, sorry. the kids came in and they saw food and they're teenagers and they gravitated to that. And we just laughed. And it's like, wow, that is, something you would not expect, the 2018 Rockets. But these kids that are, 19 years old, they come in and they see, free food and, those of us in the media will have to wait for them to eat first, which it's fine. But it's just a reminder of the times. Gretchen, thank you so much for doing this. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to plug to our audience as far as upcoming events in the off season? I know the details aren't finalized yet, but I'm sure you guys are going to do something for your fans with the draft. Is there anything else that's on the horizon as far as the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, I mean, I think around the last time we did this, maybe before, I sort of teased a cool content piece that turned out to be Coach Silas's documentary. So we're wrapping up another one or two features that'll be really, really awesome for fans. So keep an eye out on our social and YouTube and all of that for the fun content from this past season. You talked about kind of our ticket promotion that's going to go for about another week, up until the draft lottery, which is on the 17th. So it's a really fun way for fans to get engaged at a pretty good price. We've got a ton of concerts. So I know that this is basketball, but Toyota Center will be rocking all summer with a lot of concerts, and we'll have news coming out pretty soon, probably around the draft lottery shortly after, about draft party details. So last year at Karbach, it was awesome, and we'd love to see everybody out there. And for those of you that have kids, part of our big initiatives that we didn't really talk about this year, we touched a little bit on a court refurbishment, but we're really building up our youth basketball camps. Matt Bullard has been helping us do that. And so we've got 3 different week-long camps that are occurring this summer. So if you got kids and you want them to learn the Rockets way, I hope they can come out and join us.
And the best part of the events of Karbach is that they're dog friendly too. So shout out to Buttons and Chelsea, my dogs. They'll look forward to seeing other Rockets fans in a few weeks.
I cannot bring my dog Shelby cannot come. Like, she would run away and jump the fence. So I might be able to bring my little one Hazel, but the other one is a fence jumper. So
yeah, that'd be a little risky.
Yeah.
Well, Gretchen, thank you so much for the time. This was great. For fans that want more, you can follow us on Twitter. My name is Ben Dubose. I write for RocketsWire as well, rocketswire.usatoday.com and the RocketsWire on Twitter. Thanks as always for listening, and please come back soon for another new episode.